Fabricadabra at LPL presents loyalty card wallets. Nowadays, everyone has one or two gift cards or loyalty cards from stores and restaurants. Of course, you can never find them when you're looking for them. So today we're going to make a wallet for those cards out of a variety of fabric scraps. Let's get started. We'll need about 5 or 6 or so strips of cotton fabric with different patterns. They should be 4 inches long and 1 to 2 inches wide. They will be sewn together to create the outside of the wallet at 8 1/4 by 4 inches. We then need 3 larger strips of fabric with at least 2 different patterns measuring 8 1/4 by 4 inches. Okay. So we also need one 8 1/4 by 4 inch strip of a plain fabric to use as interfacing on the outside part of the wallet. We will use an iron-on adhesive, here Heat and Bond Light, to glue the 2 strips together. You can also buy iron-on interfacing. Next we need 1 hair elastic and 1 button or bead of medium to large size. To complete the project, we will use scissors, a ruler, an iron, pins and thread, and either a sewing machine or a hand sewing needle. We begin by sewing the 5 or 6 small strips of fabric together along their longer sides using a 1/8 to 1/4 inch seam allowance. Here you'll see I'm putting 2 different strips together facing each other, so right sides together, and I'm going to do the stitch right along the edge of the long side. And here I am. I'm going to put them together again, and then I'm going to sew that on the sewing machine. I'm using a straight stitch, just the very most basic stitch you can use. And I'm using about a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but you could use an 1/8 of an inch. I probably wouldn't go over a 1/4 of an inch, but if you do, it's not a big deal. You'll just end up adding more strips of fabric to complete this this part of the wallet. So did a little back stitch right there at the beginning, and then just sew all the way down. Do a little back stitch at the end to lock it in place. Okay, and you're going to do that for all the strips, but between each of the strips, after sewing each of these seams, we need to iron the seam allowance flat. I found using a medium setting without steam on the iron worked just fine for me. However, you may want to use the higher cotton setting that is that requires steam. But I just found that the medium worked fine for me and my purposes. You want to flip it over, of course, and also iron the outside or the right side, so it's nice and flat. You can do that for each of those strips. You're going to put to the next strip, to the next strip, and you're going to make one long strip of till you get to about 8 1/4 by 4 inches. Here is the finished outside strip for the wallet. As you can see, I ended up using 7 strips of fabric, and now I will need to cut off the excess of the last and largest strip. Remember, the entire strip needs to be 8 1/4 inches long. You may notice that my strip came out uneven. This is because I did not measure and cut each small strip evenly, causing a distortion in the whole piece. I suggest being as precise as you can with your measuring and cutting. Here we have 2 large 8 1/4 by 4 inch strips. One is the pieced together strip that will be the outside of the wallet. The other strip will be the inside that is mostly covered by the inside pockets. So choose the patterned fabric to contrast with at least the upper pocket. Next, we will apply the iron-on adhesive. Okay, place your fabric strip face down. Then place the adhesive with the textured side down. Then iron on a medium setting without steam for 6 to 10 seconds. Now I messed up the filming of this part, so I am using a different fabric example to show you the rest of the process. To apply the plain interface fabric to the backside of the pattern strip, first peel off the paper backing of the adhesive. Then place the plain strip on the pattern strip and iron for 6 to 10 seconds. For the next part, grab the last two large strips. These will be the pockets. Take one strip and fold it in half. Then you want to iron it until there is a sharp crease on the fold. Once that's done, you want to do the same for the second strip. Fold it in half and then iron it until there is a sharp crease. This is the inside strip of the wallet. You can see that I've already drawn a line 1 inch from the bottom of that strip. Take one of your pocket strips and place the bottom edge of it along the top edge of that line. We're going to place a zigzag or overlock stitch right there. Next, take your second pocket strip and put the bottom edge of that against the bottom edge of the inside strip. Again, we're going to place a zigzag or overlock stitch right there at the bottom. This is me sewing the first of the pocket strips to the inside strip of the wallet. You'll see that because it's a zigzag stitch, it's going in between the two ends of that hole. So that's where we want our fabric to be. And here we go. It's kind of an interesting stitch. It goes up and down and across. It's a little bit slower than a regular stitch. And I'm going to stop right there. And now I'm going to show you the end result. That is what the zigzag stitch looks like. Okay, so now we have the piece that we just finished with the pockets on it. And we're going to draw a line in the middle, either with some chalk or some kind of pencil. And then you want to draw a line on each side. You want it to be fairly close to each other. And you probably want to be a little bit more precise than I'm being. Okay, so these are the 3 lines where we're going to actually put some straight stitches in, just up and down stitches. By doing those middle stitches, we've created the pockets for the inside piece of the wallet. And now it's time to put in the hair elastic or ponytail holder. We're going to place that right over the top edge of the bottom pocket. And then we're going to sew it into place. With the piece in place, we're going to put the outside piece of the wallet on top, face down, so the right sides are touching, and then we're going to pin it into place, just like this. Now you do want to leave a 2 to 3 inch gap along the bottom edge, and you can use 2 of your pins to mark those areas. So here I finished doing the straight stitch. It's about a 1/8 to 1/4 inch seam allowance, leaving the gap, and I'm going to cut the corners, and that takes out bulk from the corners when we turn this inside out. After we cut those corners, I also recommend that you trim the seam allowance along the edges and to also reduce bulk in along the edges of the wallet. So you want to get that fairly close to the stitches, but not too close. You certainly don't want to cut through the stitches. So now that that's finished, we're going to turn the wallet inside out, okay? Or really right side out. So we're taking the pattern side and we're pulling it from inside to the outside through the gap. And this can be a bit of a time consuming project that requires a little patience. Um, and finagling, especially if you used more than one piece of interfacing. In my case, I did. I put interfacing not only on the outside strip of the wallet, but also on the inside strip. And that created a lot of bulk, which I don't recommend, which is why in my instructions I put that you use one strip of interfacing and simply use it on the outside strip of the wallet. Okay, and so sometimes you're going to get those corners to really pop out, you're going to use like a tool. A lot of people will use a wooden chopstick. I also like to use the end of long paintbrushes because they are narrow and round, and they're not so pointed that they might poke through the fabric. So you wouldn't want to use some sort of a needle tool to do that because, again, it could poke through the fabric and kind of ruin your project. So here I am, poking out the corners, trying to make them look pretty. And you can use it to run along the edges as well to kind of help to poke those out also. A lot of effort going into this. Again, and this is because I had too much bulk. So now I'm finished. Looks pretty good. You may want to give that a quick iron, but you don't necessarily have to. Okay, let's see how our elastic's poking out. Now we're going to fold in the edges of the gap towards the inside of the wallet. Okay. And pinch it closed and press it down, and then take your iron and press it nice and flat. This is going to help you later when you need to sew, or you're either going to hand stitch or use a sewing machine to sew that gap closed. And it can be tricky unless you iron it down. And as you can see right there, I have this little part of the edge of the gap that is trying to roll itself back out. And so what I'm going to end up doing is tucking it back in carefully, which is a little hard because it's kind of hot right there right now, um, because of the iron. So I flipped it over, tucked it back in, and going to iron that into submission. Okay, you don't want any part of that poking back out because it's just going to ruin the nice clean edge of your wallet. So there we go. It's almost ready for stitching. Yay! And here is the finished product. I've sewed it, the gap closed. You'll notice that throughout this project I have used a very visible red thread. Normally I would have used black so that it blended in. And so right here you're going to, fold it. And then you see on this outside bit where the elastic is going to latch on, you're going to want to put a bead or a button. And you can hand sew it on, which is what I've done, or you can hot glue it on. Either way works. And this is going to work as the basically the latching mechanism to keep the wallet closed. This is the back of the wallet. And in just a moment, we'll see the wallet just kind of laid out flat, and you can see how pretty the scraps look. That's the outside part of the wallet. So the different smaller scraps that we sewed, strips that we sewed into a larger strip. Okay, and this is the inside. You see the pockets. We put some cards in there. That's not normally how you'd put the cards, but I just wanted to show you. And thank you for watching this. Happy sewing.